Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending another one of AMC's webinars. We'd like to do these in conjunction with our in-person seminars to allow those that sometimes aren't able to come in person due to busy schedules or different issues to still be able to continue and attend our ongoing educational series that we have for board members. So thank you all for attending. Tonight we want to thank Connor Doyle from VIVE and also VIVE for sponsoring tonight's webinar. VIVE is a vendor information verification experts, and AMC is partnering with VIVE in October. We're always looking for ways to improve our services and enhance our offering to our associations that we manage. So VIVE is going to be an integral partner for us moving forward. As your management company, is our obligation to screen vendors for both insurance and licensing. And so it's one of those things that we take very serious, and we're wanting to partner with VIVE to help us in that endeavor. I would like to introduce everyone to Connor Doyle. He is a national sales director. He's a 20-year veteran of the association management world. He's owned companies. He's also worked for some of the largest management firms in the country. At the end of tonight's presentation, we will be holding a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please write those down, hold them, and we'll give you an opportunity to address them with Connor. So Connor, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for sponsoring our webinar, and the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, Tony. And thank you for the opportunity to work with AMC. It's a real honor, and we can't wait to get started. And so my goal tonight is just to basically introduce VIVE and give you an idea of who we are, what we're doing, and why it's so important. And ultimately, the reason that VIVE was created was an acknowledgement of the challenges that not only management companies are facing, but board members, the associations that they're responsible for. The sands have shifted beneath our feet in quite a few ways in our industry, and we feel that VIVE is a necessary corrective to adjust to what's been changing. So I'm going to walk you through that. I'll try not to go on for too long on prepared remarks. I think everybody's a little tired of hearing people talk on video and PowerPoints these days. So I'd love to get us to some questions. We will have time for a Q&A at the end. So I'll get started here. Tony gave you an idea of my background, but I'm not the only person at VIVE that has a substantial background in the association management world. President of VIVE, Joe Bushy, he's a third-generation management company owner. He managed that company for 20 years before he started VIVE. And as a group, we have more than 80 years of experience within our organization, within the association management world specifically. So we're not people who have decided that we were going to start working here. We're people who first did the work of actually running associations around the country and have all collaborated together to create a product that we feel really addresses the problems and the needs that we experienced when we were in the position that Tony and Barbara are in, but also ourselves as board members in our own associations. So I would like to give you a quick illustration of what the core sort of value proposition is. And the value proposition is to avoid something like this happening to you. And this is a true story. Happened to one of our clients in North Carolina. I've anonymized it, obviously, but this all happened before they signed up with VIVE. This is actually sort of the inciting event that got them to sign up with VIVE. So they had a small job that came up basically inside of a condominium unit. A sprinkler inside of a wall started leaking. They needed to cut a small hole in the drywall in order to fix the sprinkler. And the management company was then asked to bring someone in to patch that hole. The management company went with a vendor that they had worked with for more than 5 years. This was someone that they had deployed on dozens of jobs like this. He had always done a really good job. And as is par for the course, the management company did collect a COI and their W-9 before starting. A COI, if you don't know, is a certificate of insurance. But as is so often the case, as things went on, they were not informed of the vendor's insurance status, and also had not gone through the arduous work of following up, because it's really not the management company's job. So what happened in this situation, and it's not uncommon, is that the vendor then hired a subcontractor to come out and actually perform the work. That subcontractor decided to do something really, really dumb, which is use a hairdryer to dry the drywall patch. The heat from the hairdryer then set off the sprinkler in the unit, causing a catastrophic loss of that one unit and a partial loss of the two adjoining units. That is the period of time at which everyone then discovers that the vendor that was initially hired had let his insurance lapse some time ago without informing anybody, and that the subcontractor also had no insurance. That means that the association is now covering that bill. And the cost of this type of event happening to an association starts at $10,000. That's usually the deductible for many insurance plans. Sometimes it's higher than that. But that may not be the only cost. There are also cases in which you may decide that you don't actually want to file a claim on your insurance because the total repair is going to be $30,000 and it's not worth it to go through that process. But whenever an accident happens, what I want in your mind is that the starting tab is $10K and it goes up from there. And so this is ultimately the type of thing that can happen. I wish it happened far less, but it is happening. It does happen all the time. When you have people on your property, when you have people doing important work, accidents happen. And what we need to take into account is that we have to make sure that you as an association, the management company, all parties involved are properly protected from having to take on liability from that type of event. But vendors having accidents isn't the only problem that we face. We also are in an insurance, man, that is jumpy. We're in an insurance context right now that's really, really dangerous. I like to say that the iceberg that our entire industry, the association management world, is heading towards right now is insurance. And frankly, particularly in the state of California, I don't even think it's a possibility, the likelihood that many associations, particularly smaller ones within California, are going to be either literally or practically uninsurable within the next decade. Insurance costs have skyrocketed in the last 5 years. Nationwide, we've seen more than a doubling of premiums across the board. From what I understand in California, the problem's a little bit worse there. But what's also worth noting is that those same insurance pressures that are imposing themselves against homeowners associations are also imposing themselves against the vendors that you work with. And those economic realities may end up leading to some real changes in the vendor market in terms of what type of insurance they're carrying. The studies that we've been able to get access to state that more than 75% of small businesses in America are not fully insured. And that is to mean that they either don't carry a specific line of insurance, say workers' comp, that they should carry in order to properly protect the work that they're doing, or are sort of cutting corners on the limits of their coverage, which is just as big of a problem if you have a $500,000 general liability policy, but you're doing roofing work. It goes without saying that there's a high probability that the liability you can incur would be greater than the limit of that policy, and that means it taps out. Also, about 40% of small businesses carry no insurance at all. And the bottom line is that within the HOA and condo world, the vast majority of the vendors that we're working with are small businesses. My full expectation is that there are people right now that are working on the properties that you are boards for, or are colleagues, other communities within your region are currently working with people that have no insurance. That is a massive, massive problem, considering that almost every association in America is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit corporation and is bound by the same laws that all businesses are bound by. One of those being you have to work with people that you're legally allowed to work with. They have to be licensed, so on and so forth. We're going to get more into that in a second. There's also the issue of the process of just collecting a COI, which is something that very often may happen. The board may get one, the management company may get one, but simply collecting a COI isn't really doing the job that people think that it's doing. First of all, gathering that someone has insurance only gets you so far. The real point is making sure that that insurance policy is actually going to cover the association in the event of there being an accident. And that means that you have to get yourself as an additionally insured, you also need to establish that what is on that policy meets the criteria that makes sense for the work that's being done. So we not only at VIVE are going to be collecting policies, we're going to be vetting them to make sure that the coverages that we require are in place and are of sufficient value to protect you in the event of something going wrong. Finally, working with unlicensed vendors is not allowed. It's illegal. You're not allowed to hire someone to do electrical work who doesn't have an electrical license. And that goes for a whole host of trades in the state of California. I think as individual homeowners, sometimes we feel that it's a pretty muted possibility of something like that being a problem for us. And we may feel a little more comfortable hiring someone without checking their licenses. But just to reiterate, you are the steward of a multi-million-dollar nonprofit corporation. There are different rules that apply to the decisions that an association makes on vendor acquisition than what an individual homeowner makes. And it must be taken into account that you are obligated as a board member to follow the law and practice and use best practices in the decisions that you make. So here's how it is that VIVE is going to protect you. First, what it is that we want you to be aware of, then I'm going to tell you how we protect you. So the first is that every time that you have to make a claim on your insurance is going to go up. So not only are you going to have a deductible, you are going to see an even worse increase in your insurance premiums than normal. So really what we're talking about here is this is the heart of the fiduciary duty that you sign on for when you are a board member, that it's your job to protect the assets of the association. It's your job to protect the financial future of the association. And one of the best ways of doing so, I think probably the most vital way of doing so, is ensuring that you are not exposing the association's insurance policy and its assets to the possibility of getting attached to a lawsuit over vendor liability. We have to just squelch that possibility entirely. Second, as I sort of alluded to before, you must utilize best practice. You must follow best practices. You must use sound business judgment in your decisions as a board member. Failure to do so could mean the possibility of personal liability. Hopefully, you have directors and officers insurance as one of the insurance policies for your association. But it's very important to note that that is not a get out of jail free card. Directors and officers insurance, almost every policy I've ever seen has a clause in there about sound, reasonable business decisions. If it is found that you made a decision as a board member where you either knowingly did something that you weren't supposed to do, like hire an unlicensed contractor, or you aren't taking the proper steps to ensure that things are being done as well as can be expected. For instance, if you don't utilize your professional management company's services and instead go your own way and sort of evade those things, that can be seen as you taking steps that aren't really consistent with sound business practices. And it is not unheard of, and it's growing in frequency, where we are hearing about individual board members actually now being sued and not being covered by that directors and officers policy. Obviously, you are volunteer layperson board members. At no point in time should personal liability ever come into play for your duties as a board member. We want to make sure that everything that we're doing is putting you in a position where you are personally covered. Finally, we just have to acknowledge we do live in overly litigious times. I think that's going to continue. We've noticed that judgments are going up. But more importantly, when we are in uncertain economic times, we have to expect that there are going to be more people who may decide that they are going to target people for, illegal activity. Associations are frequent targets of fraud and embezzlement. And one of the easiest ways to defraud an association is for someone to create a fake maintenance company and charge them a bunch of really small tickets for work that never gets done. But also, if you were planning on having a slip and fall so you can get a nice paid 6-month vacation, there are a few more attractive targets than an association, because a couple of things about every community association. They have some money in the bank, they've got insurance. So we need to do everything that we can to protect community associations. It's why you hire a great company like AMC to protect your SICs on all the daily decisions that come up. And ultimately, we're a part of the services that AMC are providing to try and put up a firewall between you and the possibility of something attacking the assets of the association. So the way that we're going to go about actually doing the protection that we're talking about, basically a 4-step process here. One of those steps is in the process of happening right now. Actually, I think today we finally made the decision on what the vendor compliance is going to look like. So we consulted with AMC. They had some really, really great requirements that they already had in place. We adopted those, took a look at it, and came back with some constructive sort of analysis of it based upon our experience, which is quite considerable in the California market, to arrive at what we believe is the best sort of mix of maximizing risk management while not creating such overly burdensome requirements that the vendors that you want to use just aren't going to meet those standards. It would be very easy for us to require that everybody has $20 million in general liability policy. But since no one actually has that type of coverage who does the work that you need to do, that wouldn't be a very effective policy. So we have arrived at that program, and that's now going to be what VIVE is enforcing. And as part of that enforcement, the first thing that we're going to do is have every vendor that works with AMC and on communities like yours sign a master service agreement. It's going to do a couple of important things. First of all, it's going to bind the vendor to that insurance program. They're acknowledging that it's in place, that they now have a legal responsibility and obligation to continue carrying insurance in these amounts so long as they continue working at your association or with any of AMC's other communities. Failure to continue carrying that insurance or to keep up their licensing constitutes fraud because they've now entered into a contract in which they're making that legal assurance. Also, we are having in there an additional hold harmless provision that says, insurance aside, that the vendor is agreeing that they're going to take full responsibility for the work that they do and that they are not going to attempt to sue the association or the management company in the event of something going wrong. Finally, we establish blanket protection. So what that means is that the vast majority of insurance policies, but not all of them, have the idea of like blanket coverage, which means that when I, as VIVE's insurance policy, yes, we have an insurance policy that covers general liability, errors and omissions, but that blanket coverage means that if someone is a client of ours, if they're utilizing our services, that policy will address their claim if they're making it against our work. We want to establish that same thing for vendors to make sure that they have a policy that's going to be consistent with that, and that AMC and all of the associations it manages are going to be named as additionally insured parties on that policy. So this means that once a vendor is approved by VIVE for AMC, they can immediately work on your association, and your association is already an additionally named party. So no additional paperwork is needed. They're ready to work right away. Once we have them sign that master service agreement, we are then going to go through the process of collecting their certificate of insurance. We do it, we get that directly from their insurance agent. We do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, that eliminates the possibility of a fraudulent COI being provided to us. It is very, very easy to forge an insurance document if you have Adobe Acrobat or just about anything. So we want to remove that possibility and go directly to the source to ensure that we are getting legitimate insurance documents for policies that are active. We also want to establish a rapport with that insurance provider. So if the vendor does cancel their policy, we're going to be notified right away. And also as those policies expire and new policies are issued, that we're automatically getting those renewals, so we can ensure at all times that an approved vendor has current insurance on record with us and that we have vetted those policies. In addition to vetting the insurance policies with our team of licensed risk managers, we're also going to be ascertaining whether or not the vendor has all of the appropriate licenses for the trades in which they work. The vendor is going to tell us what trades that they work within. So someone can come in and say, I'm an electrician and I'm a plumber and I'm a roofer. It doesn't happen, but theoretically, someone may do all three of those things. All of those require licenses. So in order for them to pass, we're going to need them to provide us evidence that they have those licenses. And then we're going to go check with the relevant governing authorities to make sure that those licenses are current. And we will continue the process of checking on those licenses on an annual basis to make sure that they're staying current with those licenses. In addition to the license tracking, we're also going to be doing a public data search, just checking with the Secretary of State to make sure that this is a registered business, they're in good standing. And finally, we are going to be doing a tax ID check to make sure that the tax ID number provided to us by the vendor checks out with the IRS so we can remain compliant with tax law. So I think hopefully I've done a good job of establishing why this is important for associations and as a result for management companies. But this isn't just a cover charge. Yes, we are going to be charging vendors. but ultimately we want to view this as an investment that vendors are making. And one of those main things that we're providing to vendors, outside, by the way, of what is sort of a primary one, which is that being an approved vendor for AMC means that that vendor now has the ability to work with more than 100 community associations in your greater metro area. That's a very attractive proposition. And because of the way that we do things, that they're ready to work on any of those associations right away. So it really does give them a leg up, a better opportunity to get more work, which is the goal of many vendors. Everybody wants more revenue for the most part. But also we have what we call our vendor savings program. Every vendor who signs up with VIVE has the ability for, at no additional charge, to become part of a national co-op of independent contractors, where that program is negotiating discounts on things that vendors use every day, things like fuel, uniforms, credit card processing, payroll processing, Office Depot, Ace Hardware. It's a large list. It's a list that's constantly changing. Think about it a little bit almost like if you have a platinum travel card and you'll see offers coming in from various outlets that you can get additional savings on. It's the same idea with this. And we look at this as a way, particularly for smaller vendors, of giving them an advantage that very often they don't have relative to their larger peers, which is the ability to get volume pricing in spite of the fact that they may just be a small shop. Again, it's entirely free for them to use. We're going to handle the marketing of that. So as people get registered, we share with them how to get hooked up with the Savings for Members Network. And we really do encourage it. The more people who sign up, the better the savings are going to be for everybody. And the way that we look at it is that the $149 investment that they're making to be an approved vendor with AMC, they're either going to make up, they're going to get their ROI either on the opportunity to get more work, or they should be able to save at least $149 a year just on the Vendors for Savings program. For instance, in Q1 of this year, VIVE vendors saved more than $25,000 on gasoline alone. So it is a real program. It's something that we're really proud of. And we just want you to know that this isn't just something that we take casually. Obviously, AMC doesn't take the decision to charge vendors lightly, but we want to make sure that every party involved, associations, HOA board members, AMC, and the vendors themselves are getting value out of this proposition, and that it becomes a mutually beneficial relationship. Before getting into an open Q&A, I wanted to address a couple of frequently asked questions that come up on most of these board webinars. The first is, what about small vendors? And it's a totally reasonable one. I'm pretty sure it was the first question that Tony asked me when he and I met a while back. And it's totally understandable. Small vendors are very much the lifeblood of the community association world. There are large vendors in almost every walk of life. But generally, the feeling is, and I think it's an accurate one, that smaller vendors are able to give you a higher level of attentive service and also sometimes able to keep their costs down. However, and this is an absolute unfortunate reality, is that VIVE wouldn't need to exist if it wasn't for small vendors. The entire purpose of this program is to protect you from the fact that small vendors and small businesses are uninsured at really high rates, really dangerous rates. And that if you were only working with large, statewide or national firms, you wouldn't need us to tell you that their insurance is in order, because they're large companies. They don't mess around with that kind of stuff. But it is your small mom and pop vendors where the possibility exists, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, that they may be entering into a working relationship with you in which they're not carrying the insurance necessary to properly cover their work. So it is an unfortunate reality. And the way that we like to look at it is that we have established things for small vendors to get more value out of this program than the large ones. Just to name a company that everybody tends to know, Brightview, largest landscaping company in the country. They don't care. They pay the VIVE fee for all of our more than 140 clients nationwide without really putting up a fuss, because it's just cost of doing business for them. But for small vendors, this is really an opportunity to put themselves in the same realm as a Brightview, to get the same marketing push by being on the approved vendor list for AMC. But in return, we're acknowledging the reality that they are the ones who are most often going to put associations in a compromising position. On the similar vein, there's usually a concern about, hey, we just have a one-time job, community center, we need a new air conditioner in it. I get it. And it is a real pain to have one-time vendors or vendors who are doing small work come out and have to pay $149 if it's their first time working with AMC. The first thing, and my sincere hope is that you will talk to your manager when something comes up and have your manager look to see if there's an approved vendor within AMC's roles already who is available to do that work. Then we have no issue whatsoever. You're sure that their insurance and everything is in order. They're ready to work without any further paperwork or payment coming in. But if you do encounter a situation in which either you have someone specific that you want to work with, or potentially we're not finding that vendor currently in the approved vendor list for AMC, what I want you to understand is that the risk is the same. There is no smaller amount of risk for bodily injury if someone was only going to be on your property once or for an hour. The bottom line is if someone gets hurt or if there's negligent work done or some other liability arises, the cost of that is the same to the association as it would be if someone was out there 5 times a week. And we must acknowledge that so many of these accidents are the one-time jobs. Tree trimming is probably the leading cause of claims in community associations. That's something that most people do maybe once a year. So yeah, it's technically a one-time job, but those one-time jobs also tend to be the ones that carry a heightened amount of risk because it usually involves something that's a big ticket item that potentially poses a risk to someone. So I believe that the value is the same and that the threat is the same, and that ultimately the goal needs to be to mitigate these threats to the association. And it is my sincere belief that you try, like moving around it, attempting to work with a vendor who's not VIVE approved just to save the $149 is a bad move as an association. And if you're in a situation where you're saving a lot of money with a vendor, but they don't want to pay, I believe, and this is something that we've heard a lot of other board members say, it's worth it for the association to pay the $149 just to have the additional insurance, not really insurance, but the additional assurance that this vendor has all their stuff in order without you taking on that risk. And so that's the way that we look: small vendors, one-time vendors, small jobs. Ultimately, the second that someone steps foot on your property, there's a massive amount of liability in place, and that liability goes up the more valuable the work is or the more dangerous the work is. But ultimately, our goal has to be to ensure that no vendor stepping foot on property at any point in time is not properly insured and licensed for the work that they're doing and for their presence on property. Another one that comes up is, why isn't the management company paying for this? And I get that, but the issue is that management companies are not supposed to be in the position of being your risk management partner. In the same way that your management company does not issue HOA insurance, you go to an insurance agent for that. In the same way that Tony's not coming out and cleaning pools on your property. That's not what management companies are there for. Management companies are here to connect you with professional service providers, hopefully the best that they can find, so you can get the work done on your property that you need in the most professional manner possible. And so we're a part of that same rubric. Ultimately, we are being brought in to be risk management partners and consultants for AMC and all of the associations, with the understanding that historically, this has not been something that has been prioritized for mostly worse. But the truth is that when I opened my management company 20 years ago, the risk involved for people was very small. Insurance prices for associations were incredibly cheap. No one really concerned themselves with this, but the world has changed. The sands have shifted beneath our feet, and we must adjust to new times. And so ultimately, this is AMC taking the opportunity to find, I believe that we are best in class in our industry in terms of what we do and providing that service for you. That's not factored into their management fee, and ultimately it wasn't what they were here to do in the first place. So we should be viewed in the same league as people who clean your pool, people who mow your lawn. The last one that I want to bring up before I open it up to your questions is, you have a vendor who insists that they don't want to sign up and you don't want to make them. There is the possibility, if you want, that you can sign a waiver that serves as an indemnification for AMC to accept a specific vendor to work on your property. And on that waiver, it's going to say that the board is taking full responsibility for what happens with that vendor, that AMC is not checking their insurance, is not going to be responsible for that, and that you as a board are taking on that responsibility to assess whether or not that vendor has insurance that is covering you. It is my strong recommendation, and I'm not just saying this because, you know, it's my business to get vendors signed up, that you should never sign that waiver, and that instead you should insist that the vendors that you're working with go through this program. But ultimately, that decision is yours. You are responsible for the stewardship of your association and to make the best decisions that you can. So if you do have a scenario in which you do want a vendor to be excluded from the program, please talk to your manager, have them run it up the flagpole. The executive team at AMC is going to be responsible for situations like that, and they will be able to present you with a waiver to have that, to have them explicitly indemnified and have that vendor exempted just for your association. Please know, though, that will not mean that the vendor is able to work at any other association with AMC. If they do want to work anywhere else, they are going to have to go through the verification process. And that, you know, hopefully that they will see the value in it as much as you do at the end of this session. So I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm done with my prepared remarks. I'd love to open up the floor to any questions that you might have. I feel like I'm running up against Dancing with the Stars.
Do we have any questions from any of the attendees for Connor?
I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
There you are, Deborah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm late.
You're okay.
I'm the only one in the webinar, am I?
Yeah, no, you're not.
Okay. I was late and I apologize. It sounds from the little bit that I did catch is like AMC, the managing company, signing on with you guys, going through you guys for the vendors.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I would like to know, do you guys have security, people that come in and do security? Are they part of your vendor packet as well?
So just to sort of make clear, we are not a vendor registry service in the sense that vendors sign up with us to then advertise their services to our clients.
Okay.
We vet the vendors that clients are working with or want to work with, and or associations want to work with. We're certainly going to be a resource for people within the AMC world. The managers to also see vendors who have been approved to work with other management companies, but they're going to have to get signed on with AMC as well, because all the work that we do is to bind that insurance policy that vendor has to your association at the end of the day. So we don't have, yes, there are tons of security companies that have signed up with VIVE in Northern California. And if you are in the lookout for one, please reach out to your manager. We will get them hooked up with some resources, so hopefully they can find some great vendors for you, who will then have to go through the program with AMC in order to start work on your property. But I just want to be clear, we're not like an Angie's List. That's not what we do. We are a risk management company that's here to ascertain whether or not the vendors that you're working with or want to work with are properly insured, licensed, and in good standing with the government.
Okay, so for those of us who have some vendors that has been with us for 10 years or more, and I think ours have been, partners, or one security probably. If we wanted to have them vetted to see if their license and all that stuff were up to par, would I go to the manager, Todd? Would I go to, how would that come into play?
So,
Yeah.
Deborah, as a whole, every vendor that ultimately works with AMC to then service any of our associations, all of them across the board are going to be asked to sign up with VIVE and get their insurance and their licenses verified. Any of those that do not, we will be notified, and Todd will be coming to you and saying, this vendor that you have been using no longer is not verified. They have decided not to sign up for the service. we are not going to be using them. We have these other vendors that are available now to the association for you to choose from.
Okay, okay, so you guys are gonna ring it in with other resources that we can do if other vendors working on the property decide not to become a part of VIVE, the membership.
But
Now,
Deborah,
ahead.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you. Most of our vendors have already been vetted
okay,
previously.
okay,
A lot uninsured and unlicensed vendors, but as Connor was telling you, they are on a regular basis going back and rechecking to make sure something didn't change or their license or their insurance didn't expire and they didn't renew. So that's,
okay,
so they were all vetted when they first started, but they're gonna do it on an annual basis.
a yearly thing,
Make sure they're on top of it all the time.
making sure people are, yeah.
Correct, but they stay vetted once they are vetted.
Okay,
Got
now,
it? Okay,
okay, thank you for explaining that, Barbara, I
you're
appreciate.
welcome.
Now, what is the cost to us from the association? Villa Teresa, what are we gonna be paying? What is our part for paying for this fee? Because I heard you mention like 149, something like that, but I wasn't sure if we, the community, are gonna share in the cost of that.
No, there will be no additional charge to the association.
Okay,
So this is part of us as your management company wanting to do our best to provide that best top of level service to ensure
yeah,
vendors that we are bringing onto the property are licensed and insured properly.
okay,
The $149 that Connor talks about is a cost that will go directly to the vendor itself. And so that's in a situation where a vendor may feel that it is not worthwhile to them to pay that $149. In which case, we will then have to make the critical call to say we can no longer work with you as a vendor.
okay. Another question, sorry, I have so many questions. Is this something that a lot of homeowners associations are doing across California? Is this something that is, I guess, approved and okay with the legislator, that vendors are vetted? I mean, I think it's a great idea. That way we know that if there's any claims or people getting hurt, that we have some sort of protection to make sure that these people are insured to be working out here and they have everything that they need. But I just wanted to ask that quick question.
Yeah, we work with a large number of companies within California, and everything that we're doing is consistent with state law across the country. There is no problem with vetting vendors.
Yeah, California, they regulate everything.
Yeah.
Legislators, they have that A and B, a lot of stuff going on. So just wanted to make sure that I guess there's not a law that have to be put in place for the vendors to be registered with VIVE.
No.
Okay.
No. Totally
Okay.
voluntary.
Well, thank you for having this class. Very informational, and definitely I think it's a positive thing, a good way for looking out for the associations, making sure people are insured and vetted properly.
Well, thank you for your time tonight, Deborah. We appreciate it. And thank you for your service to your community.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, Connor. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
If you do have a question, you are on mute, so you will need to unmute yourself, or if you're savvy with Zoom, you can raise your hand. Well, it doesn't appear we have any more questions for you, Connor. It looks like you covered all the bases. For those of you who potentially would want to share this with other board members or those fellow board members on your current board, we will in time be hosting this on our YouTube channel. So I think there's some really good nuggets in here. We'll be posting that so you can refer back to it. You'll be able to access it and provide links to anybody else that you'd want to make sure has this information available to them.
Sounds good.
Well, then thank you everybody for your time tonight. Sorry. Did someone say?
I would have thought they'd have more questions.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, anybody cut me off if you have a question.
Yeah, no, I would have thought they would have. I don't see anybody raising their hands. No.
Okay. All right.
Right.
Well, then, yeah, thank you so much for your time tonight, everybody. And thank you for working with AMC. You picked a really good company with a wonderful reputation. And I know that we are just a part of a bunch of exciting things that are coming on board at AMC. You know, we're honored to work with you. We're honored to work with AMC. And certainly if you ever have any more questions about VIVE, please do let your manager know. They will be able to access the resources up to and including me to answer any questions that you might have in the future. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay.
I would like to remind all the board members to watch for their flyers. We have another seminar coming up in October from Lance with Angus and Terry. He'll be going over board fiduciary responsibilities. And then in November, a webinar with, backed by popular demand, Bob Browning teaching board members how to read their full reserve study. So be sure to watch for your invitations and register as they're coming up.
Fun stuff.
May I make a request? This is Deborah.
You can ask.
Either of you, Barbara or Tony.
Uh-huh,
I love the classes. I always learn so much.
right?
I have never seen a class, and we need it because I'm going through it, and I'd like to know how it really works with the process. And that's on board members having to do, communities having to do foreclosure. Is there
Yes.
any way to get a class on
Yes, that's
What-
coming up in the first quarter of 2024.
2024?
Yes, we're already working on lining up next year's seminars. and
Yeah.
webinars.
Okay, yeah, that's one that I think
But
is
if you
really-
give me a call after, not tonight, because I'm tired, but I'll help you.
I
'cause I've
understand.
gone through it a couple times, Deb, so I can help you.
Yeah, I would like to definitely see something on that, the process, how much it costs, what it means.
Yeah.
You know, the pros and cons.
Sure.
Would be a great idea.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that. All right, well,
Mm.
thanks again, Connor, for your time to come out and share about the new program, your program VIBE, and thank you, AMC, to do what you do to make sure that we get the services that we need and that people are truly vetted and up to par to bring us services. So we appreciate you on doing that. And with that, I guess I can bow out and say good night, and you guys have a great rest of your week and a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Deborah. Take
All
care.
righty.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
All right,
Bye.
Bye.
Sending.
okay.